Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on another live stream event from Space Place Canada. My name is Julie Tomei. I am one of the advisory committee members for Space Place and one of the members of the events committee. This evening, we have a great panel lined up for you. 4 members of this panel include Adam Trumpour, who is a rocket and gas turbine propulsion professional with broad involvement in the industry. He is the founder and president of Launch Canada, an organization founded to support and advance experimental rocketry in Canada. Florent Lefebvre-Schlick has held several leadership positions in the military and aerospace and defense industry. At McMaster University, Florent leads an innovative upskilling program for professionals in the industry. Jason Michaud is the founder and CEO of Stardust Technologies, which is on track to making space more accessible to humanity. Through this, Jason has established multiple international innovation projects with universities such as York University and the University of Technology, Sydney. And Omar Shabir is a 4th-year aerospace engineering student at MACH and MACH's team director. He's worked alongside leading industry professionals. And we have Wintta Ghebreiyesus, member of the Space Place board, who will be moderating tonight's event. She is a PhD candidate in the Department of Aerospace Engineering at Toronto Met University, and her connection to rocketry comes from her time spent at TMU's Rocketry Club. So I'm going to pass this on now to Wintta.
Thanks, Julie. So as you said, I will do a few housekeeping things before we get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Space Place Canada YouTube channel. I'm not able to see it live on my end, but I trust that it's up and running. But a brief backgrounder on what we are and what we do at Space Place Planetarium Canada. We are a nonprofit organization, a group of multidisciplinary professionals determined to bring an iconic physical public planetarium back to Toronto. Supporting a virtual planetarium for Canada and the world. Did you know that Toronto has not had a public planetarium since 1995, and the city is the largest tourist city without one? I would say that it's a critical missing piece of Toronto's tourism and educational infrastructure. We encourage the audience to get involved and email us to inquire about our work, being a volunteer or applying to be a member. We have a long list of active volunteers and members, and we're always looking to recruit more. We're engaged in advocacy and planning, as well as recruitment, events, and fundraising. So without further ado, it brings me great joy to introduce the topic of tonight's event, the future of Canadian aerospace, a conversation with rocket scientists. So through the course of the evening, I'd like to ask you to hold your questions till the end. We do have a dedicated Q&A. We do, however, encourage you to engage in our live stream chat. So now feel free to drop your favorite space emoji in the chat now if you agree, or comment "space is the place." My go-to is a star emoji because, as cheesy as it sounds, we're all stars in the galaxy. We're able to host amazing events like these greatly due to our sponsors. And so I'd like to kick things off by thanking our Jupiter sponsors, which are MDA, as well as Larson and Toubro. And we'd like to share 2 brief messages from MDA. Okay, so hopefully everyone's feeling excited and amped up after those videos. We also have Pratt & Whitney, which is a Mars level sponsor, as well as two Mercury level sponsors, which are Global Public Affairs and Stradiac. Thanks go out again to all of our sponsors for your continued support of Space Place Planetarium Canada. We have many more events and outreach initiatives lined up for the new year, and this means that you can help us make that happen. So with that, we're asking for donations, and for tonight only, we will do a brief screen share for a small donation of $40. You will receive a music download card that gives you access to music from McLaughlin Planetarium, which shows from sort of the 1970s through the 1980s. Some of the music composers are still active today in terms of music production. One even has an Oscar for a film score. You also get a stylish Space Place Canada COVID mask. Hopefully we're not going to need to use those for much longer, but it's, we're running low on those, so hoping to give those away. At the $75 donation level, you get all of the gifts from above. Plus, you also get a copy of Bob McDonald's book, An Earthling's Guide to Outer Space. For those of you that don't know, Bob is a CBC radio host of Quirks and Quarks. Hopefully I'm saying that right, which is broadcast every Saturday to more than 500,000 listeners. So, whether you'd like the music card or the special combo of amazing Space Place swag, please send us your mailing address to the email on the screen, which is chair@spaceplacecanada.ca. So I'm going to also put the general link in the chat for anyone that is interested. I'm going to put it in Zoom, but if we could also get it in the YouTube, that would be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, let's get started. For our audience members, where are you tuning in from tonight? And what's one thing you hope to get out of our session? Whether you're a student, a parent, or even a space or STEM enthusiast, my goal is to get you all excited about new and upcoming ways of attracting and retaining STEM talent in space. Yes, of course, there will be a focus on aerospace tonight, but you'll hear from 4 different perspectives, shedding light on educational and industry-related initiatives that are or will be in place for our future generation of rocket scientists. So again, without further ado, I'd like everyone on the panel tonight to briefly introduce yourselves and tell us what's your why, what keeps you going. So I guess I'll do from right to left on my screen. Adam.
Hi, thank you, Wintta, and hi, everybody. My name's Adam Trumper, and I wear a number of different hats. By day, I am a concept designer at Pratt & Whitney, Canada, in Mississauga, working on aircraft gas turbine engines. But I also have a long-standing passion for rocketry, rocket propulsion, and space launch. And for the last number of years, I've been running a not-for-profit called Launch Canada that's been working to support Canada's very fast-growing university student rocketry community, which now counts more than 25 universities right across the country that are all building these really sophisticated rockets and rocket propulsion systems and related technologies. And so for myself, I've always felt really strongly that if I'm in a position to help people, I want to do that. And I feel that I have a certain obligation to do that. And as somebody who had built up this skill set in rocket propulsion that was not very common in Canada, as we started to see this surge of interest in student rocketry, I found myself naturally getting involved with that and helping teach students how to be safe and successful. And to to me, for a very long time in Canada, we've tended to have these niche technologies that we focus on, but usually that's been done to the exclusion of all else. And historically, rocketry was not one of the areas that we tended to focus on very much. But all of a sudden, we've got all of these students that are excelling in this, and it's really drawing them into STEM. And so I'm really passionate about trying to move us closer towards a situation where students feel free to follow their passions and their dreams and understand that as challenging as it may be, there are those of us who believe in them, believe in what they can do, and are willing to walk the walk and support them.
Thanks, Adam. And really, it's that student footprint, which is outside of the classroom and outside of the sort of walls of the institutions that they attend. And as I guess we're starting to see with Launch Canada, that it's across the nation. So it's definitely exciting work that you're doing, and always inspiring students is the way to go. So thank you. Next, Jason.
Hi, my name is Jason Michaud. I'm originally from Dubreuilville, in between White River and Wawa. Most people won't know where that is. There's less than 900 people in that village, in the traditional land of Mishpekautin First Nations. Part of my family's from Mishpekautin, and most of my family's from Dubreuilville, in Ontario. And so I kind of have a different little path how I got into aerospace. It's been just a couple of years compared to a few like Adam that's been there in his whole life, because it's always felt like it was something that was unachievable. From my perspective, coming from northern and indigenous communities, it's not really something that you think you can actually delve in. And when I was in high school, I was one of the first to graduate high school in my family, and they basically told us, you're not going to go in these different fields in the big city, because Toronto's scary for most people up north. So unfortunately, they were telling me to go in forestry or mining, and that was it. And I always wanted to show that there's the possibilities if we can dream big and work hard for our northern youth in the remote communities, so that these things can be achievable. And I basically told them hold my glass of water to keep it PG, and we've been working very hard at trying to create new opportunities for the aerospace industry in Northern Ontario and across the world, where we can inspire the youth so that they can actually believe that they can be part of this industry, and not only believe that they can be, but having ongoing mentors and people that are there to really support them. Because it breaks my heart when I hear when kids say, I'm not smart enough to do certain things. We eat their dreams, and we got to stop doing that. And at the end of the day, that's why I'm in it. It's really to inspire these youths and be that spark that will create the leaders of tomorrow. And always looking for ways that we can help humanity while doing it. So
Thanks, Jason. And you've come a long way. I think you said forestry and mining, so we'd be happy to talk more about that today. But really, it's encouraging students and the youth that they can do anything that they set their minds on. And what better way to do that than becoming more involved in some of your initiatives at Stardust. So thank you. Next, we'll go with Umar.
All right. Excuse me. Hello, everybody. My name is Omar. I'm actually a fourth-year aerospace engineering student here at Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson. I have been involved with the rocketry side of things for a few years now, mostly thanks to Adam here, actually. But I got in through one of the student groups here at TMU that existed. Previously, we were called RPG. We've just recently rebranded to MOC. And yeah, one of the things that we're currently working on is a liquid bipropellant rocket engine. As one of the few teams in the entire country working on a project like this, getting the opportunities and seeing some of the stuff that we've been able to do has just been completely something that I never expected to even be doing when I entered university as a first year. I guess the thing that primarily keeps driving me is just the fact that I came from a place in first year where I didn't necessarily understand if aerospace was the right fit for me or not, and yet here I am quite a few years later, and I couldn't be happier doing what I do right now and learning what I learn right now. And that's all thanks to panelists that you'll see here that you'll talk about, and some of the other resources and individuals that some of the panelists will also mention as well. So yeah, really excited to be here.
Excited to have you, Umar. And I'm going to sound biased because I know I would kind of work closely with your team, but we're very excited to see, your first rounds of testing and what your team is able to pull off. So last but not least, we have Flo.
Good evening, everybody. You may recognize from my accent, I'm not from here. So I came to Canada from France more than 20 years ago now. I was born even longer than that, and my oldest memory about airplanes was visiting Concorde, the third Concorde in Toulouse, at the time where airports were fully open and you could smoke in airplanes. I must have been 3 years old. That was during the first certification of that aircraft, number 3. And since then, I've spent my life both in the military and aerospace and defense sector, always in leadership role. I did a stint up north and I never met Jason. I was in Sault Ste. Marie for a few years and I had good friends in Wawa. So I know the area. I really enjoyed it.
Not a small world after all, or maybe it is a small world.
So I know the big geese in Wawa. I would say my last experience in industry, I was running a large part of operations for Bombardier Aerospace on commercial aircraft in Downsview on the Q400 platform. I really enjoyed that time. I had a great team, and I had the final line, paint shop, test flight, delivery, and airport and AMO. Good times, but good times always sometimes come to an end, and you need to do something else. And I came to McMaster University in engineering now 6 years ago with 2 ideas. One idea was to start an aerospace and space initiative that would allow, and defense as well, that would allow multidisciplinary work on large-scale projects from a variety of TRLs. And 1 week after that, I started a unique upskilling program for professionals based on short courses, entirely designed and taught with in partnership with industry experts, which is a very successful story. So right now we have more than 120 organizations working with us, more than 15 industry and professional associations. And currently we are working on a very large project focusing on aerospace and space with partners such as Milo, NASA, Lockheed Martin, Space Canada, as well the Congress of Aboriginal People, which I'm very happy to be able to do something interesting with them. And I have a very keen interest on finding the right pathway to train and help both younger generations, but also in Canada we have specific landscape, older generations to be still involved in the workplace, and also a variety of communities. Like I'm trying to do some things with veterans. I mentioned indigenous communities, and I'm also starting to dabble in the field of in helping people with disabilities. And my biggest concern as a Canadian citizen, I would say, is the large gap there is between industry requirement and employment and how we train and help the future generation. So I'm trying to do my best to contribute to bridging that gap. It seems it's starting to work, and hopefully it will continue in that direction.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Flo. And I think there's now maybe 2 Francophone folks on the call. So it's nice to see that diversity. I also am at Downsview, as you may know, for my PhD research on aircraft cabin noise reduction. But I actually wanted to dig a little deeper with you, Florent, in terms of your work with veterans. So as you know, it's becoming more and more important to train, industry professionals in aerospace. So is that something that the Veteran Project is looking at, or can you share a few snippets?
Yes, absolutely. It's a very long journey because it's at the federal government level. It's quite restrictive in terms of who you can approach, how you can approach, etc. I think the challenge we have is the following. There was a study done by the Canadian Manufacturing Exporter Group, I think 3 or 4 years ago. And in average, it takes 2 years for a young engineer to be fully integrated in the workplace. That's wrong. That's way too much. However, the problem that we have is that the standard model for universities and college is to train students per discipline, whereas industry runs by sector. So for example, you have quality people. Doesn't matter what type of engineer you are, you have a quality mindset. And so we have this big discrepancy with as well. We don't have the right ways to professionalize students. And when you are in the workplace, attitudes and behavior are much more important than your basic knowledge, which you can Google fairly easily. So things such as taking initiative, trying to work as a team, and this kind of attitude and behaviors, they take time to integrate into a curriculum, and it's not easy at all. And we have, I think, the last statistic for Ontario alone, I think we are missing something like 400,000 jobs right now, or 450. That's almost the entire city of Hamilton. So when we put that in perspective, that's a huge gap. Aerospace is missing thousands of jobs, and we are going to lose, I think, 40% of the workforce due to retirement, and the business is supposed to double. So we don't have enough trainees, we don't have enough trainers, and employers are struggling to find people both qualified and to hire. And from that perspective, that's where veterans can have an interesting role to play, because usually they have the right attitude and behaviors to work as a team. They may need reskilling or upskilling on technical topics, for example, or technical practice, which is something that universities and colleges can readily do. But I truly
that ties into your micro-credential courses.
Yeah, that's a principle, but I think also something that goes before that is the willingness and the commitment of organization to collaborate and communicate and work very closely together. And that's why right now we're in discussions with, for example, CCAA to develop a maintenance manager program out of our supervisory training. That could become a standard for Canada, and then allow people to fluctuate between organizations, for example. So we are at a changing time now, and Canada is in this very unique place where you are not forced to retire, like in France. At 63, you're out. Here you can. My oldest employee was 75, so there's only so much you can do with someone like that. However, they still have value, right? They have a lot of knowledge. Usually, they might be interested in mentoring younger persons, and the younger workforce is more inclined to use technology or work in different ways. But we have the same problems. How do we manage multi-generational behaviors, interest gaps, etc.? So there is a lot of work to be done on converging both industry needs, employer needs, people, career, and interest, and also the way we train and educate people.
Yeah, and I think that ties really nicely into one of our questions for part one of our session tonight, which is knowledge transfer initiatives or training for new professionals. So maybe I'll ask this to Jason first. What are some initiatives that you're doing or have done in the past to bridge that gap between sort of the older generation and newer professionals. Oh, you're on mute. It is a loaded question, but
Sorry about that. On my end, I've worked with the younger and the older generation, and I work with people upwards in their 60s, upwards, and people in their 20s, and definitely different mindsets and different work ethics and whatnot. But one thing that's always going to be important is mentoring and finding ways that you can connect properly with these generations. And one thing that is done often and very important in the Indigenous communities directly is to actually get everyone involved, from the elders to the chiefs and council and the youth. It is very important that if you're gonna want to do something together, is to actually the transfer of knowledge is one of those key things. But nevertheless, shadowing and being able to inspire them just by depending on their age, if they're K-12 or whatnot, just being able to do activities with them in schools and go and doing some show and tells and talking about your experience and relating to that person. For an instance, I have ADHD and I have cleidocranial dysplasia, and there's a lot of people that have ADHD and that they don't believe that they can actually integrate an industry such as aerospace, or sometimes they're struggling, especially with education, where sometimes Adam can attest to that. Sometimes we're 20 or 50 steps ahead and we need damage control behind. But nevertheless, there's that's why it's so important to find people you can relate to and work together and try to address different maybe not problems, but different struggles that you might be going through, because there's a lot of people that are going through different struggles in life, and where we might all be in the same boat, but we're not necessarily. Some are in yachts, some are in canoes, and some are some are dealing with different pathways in life. So it's really important to I would say anyways, to have personalized one-on-one to working with these people.
right, and you spoke quite eloquently on this topic of accessibility, and it spans not only the aerospace industry, but it touches almost every sector, but also about the different struggles and how we could all contribute to different pieces of the puzzle or pieces of the pie, that sort of concept. So maybe then we could go to Umar. I know you're doing a lot of work as well with reaching out to students and communities for some of your tests with mock.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the really interesting things that I've learned while leading mock actually has just been the transference of knowledge is just something that is so key to the life cycle of the team itself. As part of that, it's really important to ensure that we actually inspire this younger generation of students to take part in and participate in kind of this revolution that's happening in aerospace. Like Adam's going to tell you in a bit. But one of the things that I particularly am looking forward to is, as we go forward with our specific testing, I really aim to include some of these high school students actually from where our test site is located for our rocket engine itself, which is actually in the city of Welland, Ontario. So shout out to Welland, shout out to Simple Platforms for allowing us to work out of there and make sure that we can use that as a safe way to not only ensure that this engine gets completed, but also to ensure that we get a new generation of students incoming and kind of inspiring them to start their own experiences like rocketry and like aircraft design and like engine design, and just take up that new role as they kind of get into universities and colleges and start developing these skills.
Yeah, and I think it is both giving and taking in these cases because also it's a chicken farm, right? If I'm not mistaken.
It is a chicken farm, yes.
Yeah, so it comes full circle, I think, because as students in the city, we may not be exposed to those kinds of things. So it's nice to see everyone work together. And yeah, just I'd like to ask Adam the same question for consistency before we move on.
Yeah, so in terms of trying to build this this rocketry community in Canada, we've been in kind of this unique situation because this is an area of space technology where there is not a whole lot of established expertise here. And so we've been really working to take this kind of grassroots approach to building that up. But one of the things that is incredibly important throughout all of this, obviously, is to make sure that it's done safely. And so Launch Canada has sort of positioned itself as the epicenter of a lot of these activities to try to bring together, the community such as it does exist in the broadest possible sense, but also to recognize that rocketry is enormously multidisciplinary, and the students who take on these projects are learning a lot of incredibly transferable skills. So while we might not have a lot of people in Canada who have that depth of, say, liquid rocket engine experience, we certainly have people who are really knowledgeable systems engineers, manufacturing engineers. Many of the individual disciplines are pretty well represented. So we've been working hard to connect students with these people who do have that experience. But we also have pretty extensive connections in other countries as well. And we've found that rocketry is actually a really fruitful avenue for international collaborations. And so we've been able to pull on leaders in this industry from abroad as well, who we've been able to get to to talk to the students, take part in design reviews, share their knowledge. So we try to cast a wide net to bring the community together and make sure that there are opportunities to share that knowledge and mentor the next generation.
That's great. Absolutely, I think it does need to be all-encompassing for everyone's different appetites, so to speak. And I know we chatted sort of before about this, but it's not necessarily certification when it comes to rocketry, but having sort of manageable chunks of different areas of expertise, so students or really anyone can become an expert in it by doing that self-guided learning, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. But Adam, I think you touched on a lot of really good points there, and I'm going to tie this to some of your workflow for on the certification side, more for, I guess, aviation and advanced manufacturing. If you could speak to that point.
Yes, absolutely. So one thing that is important, I think, for the audience as well to understand, because I think you mentioned there might be as well parents, etc., that might be curious about the aerospace sector, is to understand that the aerospace and space sector is a very, very big sector. And it encompasses a lot of things, a lot of suppliers. I think Mitsubishi heavy industry between Ontario and Quebec, they must have 50 suppliers or something like that. So that's a big machine to operate. We have seen with globalization and the impact of the pandemic, now the supply chain issues, potentially a recession. There is a lot of challenge from that front as well. And there is all the aspects of manufacturing where, we talk about quality first, or quality as a pillar of making a product. And quite often it becomes more a corporate mantra rather than in the mind of every employee. So there are quite interesting challenges in that sector, which are very unique to it. I think maybe healthcare might have, and nuclear might have also similar type of attitude. But one thing that I think differentiates the aerospace sector from other sector, and I think I'm a motorcycle fan as well, so I think it's the same.
Okay.
Bikers, that it's a little bit of a club. And there is always this feeling that as long as you're an aerospace guy, we're friends until proven otherwise. And it's quite interesting because for those who are around Hamilton or here in Georgetown, you can go to the Warplane Museum and you can talk to the senior guys who are still fixing the Lancaster, for example. And you can spend hours just drinking some of their experience, their knowledge or stories. Quite often exaggerated, that's normal. That's the name of the game. And so there is this very interesting community that can germinate and grow very quickly around aerospace that I find you don't find in other sectors. And on top of that, being an industry, space maybe in some areas may be different, but aerospace being so regulated, like if you want to fly a plane, you have to really have an airplane and you have to have all the certification, all the paperwork. There can be sometimes challenges in terms of the certification process, or when we talk about new talent, such as big data management, etc. On a standard commercial airplane, when they fly across the Atlantic and when they shut down, they have gigabytes of data. We don't do anything with that usually. So there is opportunities for a lot of people with a variety of talent and interest to have a very successful career, to have a lot of fun. And the challenge that we have is that now industry and technology particularly is evolving at a pace that us human beings, we cannot keep up, and the government cannot keep up. So we are at a point where we cannot regulate properly some aspect of the industry. And that's where the concept of certification or short course accreditations for lifelong learning, for example, or if you are just curious about something, can come into play. And it could be a little bit self-regulated, like some of the things that the professional engineers do, but it's broader in scope. And one thing that is interesting is that I heard Jason mention, storytelling and involving elders and the entire community around growing. And I think Omar and Adam also had a little comment around that. I need to be careful the way I say that. I think the current model of universities and college, it will have a place in the future, but a part of it will have to adapt. And I can see that a part of it will have to actually be more flexible, less rigid. I mean, you don't need a PhD to have a successful career in aerospace. You don't even need necessarily to have an undergraduate degree, as long as you have the proper training, the proper mentoring. And I know I've seen in the UK and in Germany, they are putting more and more emphasis on apprenticeship. I know a lot of employers I talk to in the GTA, when they look at resumes, they look at the clubs that the students have participated in, because that's self-driving. They don't sleep. They spend 1 week working on the car, the rocket, or whatever. But that shows attitude and behavior. So the needs are changing. The entire ecosystem is slowly changing. And when we talk about the integration of technology, we have a big problem because it goes so fast that we can't keep up. And it can be also misleading. Like AI is not going to fly airplanes, let's be honest, because we need people to make decisions. Just AI will not run plans. That's impossible. We need people to make decisions. However, there could be aids. But how do you trust that aids? How do you truly believe in what it's doing? And that's where I think we are going to see also some tensions in the future, because to some extent we try to integrate technology as a replacement for humans, but that won't work well. If a computer that runs on AI does a bad prediction, you cannot put the computer in jail. You just turn it off. It doesn't care.
I think technology will be a gateway. definitely it will be a gateway. And even, for example, with autonomous vehicles, I'm hearing from different communities and folks that it's not being well adopted and accepted easily in certain areas. But also you said, you're working with Mohawk College, which is a unique connection there, I think. But also the need for experiential learning, and students are realizing that and recognizing that a lot sooner than we think, which is good because that's information that we could, definitely leverage. And I know, Adam, you said that, students are making decisions, university decisions on which ones to attend based on the fact that, whether they have a rocketry club or not. So these are, things not to be ignored. It means that whatever we're doing, we keep doing, but also realizing that a lot of the learning happens outside of the classroom. So with that, and also just in the interest of time and on the subject of the art of storytelling, can any of you maybe share a story of how your work with youth or with kids has impacted maybe the aerospace community or the broader science community at large? Anyone can answer this one.
I can probably start on that actually. I'm not necessarily too sure in regards to the larger community for now. I'm still fourth year. But what I can attest to is sort of the changes that I've seen in regards to just students as I've been going through my own undergraduate degree. One of the most interesting things is you really are able to notice the difference between students that have had that like hands-on experience, like Flo was mentioning, versus students that have not. One of the most obvious things that happen actually was I go through a lot of new batches of students that want to join and want to participate, which I'm really glad about, which I'm really excited about. But most of these students do start off fairly green in regards to what their knowledge base is like in rocketry. And as they progress through what my team teaches them, and as they progress through what is out there in regards to rocketry and propulsion, they start to get this deeper understanding on a technical level. However, something that for me just stands out every single time, and what keeps bringing me back to still participating in this team and still being a part of it, still leading it, is just the fact that when you see the end result of what you've been putting all this work into, it's just phenomenal, and it's amazing what it can do as well. One of the biggest aha moments that happened for me, for example, was last summer when we did a LR-101 rocket engine firing through Launch Canada. And Adam, that was literally Adam's engine. And he brought everybody together from all corners of the world. And it was, and I'll let Adam tell everybody a little bit more about that. But at the end of it, when we were able to get the hot fire completed after 4 months, those 35 seconds that it was lit for were absolutely life-changing for me. It was during that moment that I realized, like, oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And something similar happened to quite a few of my members as well, that not only attended that hot fire test as well, but it also happened to everybody from my team, at least, that came out to Launch Canada this past August to the competition itself. And I remember one of my members actually came back later that day saying, after seeing the very first launch of Launch Canada, saying, "Oh my God, I'm gonna give my all and my full life towards rocketry. Whatever you need, just tell me." And it was seeing that level of dedication and inspiration in somebody that didn't previously have that was just like awe-inspiring. Like that is what keeps waking me up in the mornings, that's what gets me out of bed. And again, that wouldn't be possible without individuals like Adam, and without individuals like Jason, Flo, yourself, Wintta, doing what you guys do, and kind of like creating these opportunities for the newer generation.
Yeah, and then from what I hear, it's, well, I also know because I was there for the summer. It really is, it sounds like a very rewarding experience for students. Sorry about the background noise. So I will also let Adam jump in before we talk about other equipment or tools that can that are related to what you do, and how we can get new recruits excited.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of impact of Launch Canada, I'm not sure there's much I could add to what Omar said. Like that is exactly the benefit of it, and hearing those types of stories from so many people, I think really does speak volumes.
Mm-hmm.
One of the cool things for me is, like, historically in Canada, if you were somebody who was watching SpaceX landing rocket stages on barges and things like that and getting really inspired by it, you didn't used to have a lot of outlets to really be able to engage with that. There was no Canadian SpaceX, so it wasn't really obvious what your opportunities were. For me, one of the most rewarding things is being able to show young Canadians that, no, you actually can do this. If you want to build a liquid rocket, we'll show you how that's done. And suddenly it stops being something that's kind of distant and remote and inaccessible and becomes something real, because they literally just saw one firing. They found themselves getting involved in things that they maybe never would have dreamed they could. And then all of a sudden, it's like a light goes on and people start imagining doing things that maybe they didn't even realize prior to that moment they ever could. And that's always really cool, because that's that's liberating. That allows people to dream and run with those dreams, and you never know where they're going to take it. But one of the things that I think has been so awesome with all this as well is that there are, with the number of student rocket teams we have now, there are far more university rocket teams than there are universities with any sort of aerospace engineering content in their academic programs. And I think it's a real testament to the enthusiasm that this industry creates, that these students have been taking it upon themselves to create these entire new pathways into the industry in huge segments of the country where that was just never an option before.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will look different for different students and different teams. To your point on a glimpse into what that glory can look like, that rush of seeing a rocket take off and land. Recovery is always a challenge, as you know, but I won't get into that too much. But even with that on a smaller scale, when during my time at TMU, we used to have the TRIFOs, which are high drag launch vehicles that we would launch in the quad, which is like a field on our campus. So that was an activity with high school students, and there's really no age when it comes to curiosity, and even on the engineering side, getting students excited. So I'd like to also ask you, Jason, what is that moment or moments where you see students are most excited, and some activities that you've done in the past?
I think circling back, it goes to storytelling. I think for students to be able to see a little bit of them in you, doesn't matter who it is. Everyone has a walk that they went through, and they struggle. They had to be mentally resilient, and to that degree, we don't just become who we are overnight. And there's many wonderful heroes out there, astronauts, that you hear of their stories. They don't talk too much about sometimes, but that come from very small communities or humble beginnings. And I think to be able to see a little bit of you in someone, it might not be the same for each speaker, but what we did with the Stardust Festival was really to get a little bit too much speakers, but we didn't think that we're gonna all agree. But we had I think Umar's still having PTSD from that. but we had almost 111 speakers, which we're toning down for next year. But it was very inspiring to hear people from all sorts of pathways from around the world, people from ESA, CSA, NASA, astronauts, Lockheed Martin, MDA, Blue Origin, and whatnot, sharing their story, not necessarily what they do at their job and everything, but how they got to where they're at and how is it possible for these kids to get involved and what kind of pathways and what helped them getting involved in. They need to know as well as that there is moments where you're going to despair, and I'm not sugarcoating it. It can be hard at times when you're trying to follow your dream, but you got to be determined, work very hard, and I think that's really what we were aiming with the Stardust Festival, showcasing these folks to the Northern Indigenous youth, because again, as unfortunately, sometimes we suffer with people telling us that, well, if you're working on a computer or you're working something that's not physical work, then you're not actually contributing to society. Some people, unfortunately, told me that in my career. And, and I've been told, oh, you're not going to last more than 6 months in business. And it's been almost 9 years now. But nevertheless, it is extremely important to inspire the future generation, and that's one thing that really echoed at the festival, was hearing from some of the kids and even some of the adults that are like, what am I doing with my career right now? Like, how do I get involved with aerospace? Can I like start a course or be involved with someone? And one of the things that I do, and I know quite a few people, and it's always amazing when I am able to connect someone with someone and that can help them out. And I'm always happy to do that because at the end of the day, we're going towards space as humanity, and we got to work together to get there and tear down these barriers and these walls so that we can make it accessible for everyone. And it's really important to see these kids being inspired, because at the end of the day, they're going to be the change makers in the next 20 years or 10 years or so. And if we want more aerospace, you got to convince them, not the current people. So nevertheless, that's kind of my perspective.
Yeah, and on the subject of breaking down those barriers, what about JAXA? You didn't say JAXA, but also I know you've done work in the past with University of Sydney, and then I know also about the mission, analog mission, something like that in Cochrane. So can you speak to that briefly?
Yeah, so we're still working with UTS in Australia to develop a robotic arm called the One for All, which is aim to launch to the moon for 2024 with haptic sensors on the robotic arm. And the first and foremost goal is to inspire the kids to actually touch the moon through a VR interface, where the robotic arm that's going to be going to the moon will record all the sensations of actually interacting with the moon and can be translated in a VR interface with haptic gloves. And then the goal is to go to schools and get these kids to actually be able to feel what it's like to touch the moon and inspire them to want to go there someday. Kind of like what you were saying, like with the rockets, to be able to actually see a rocket launcher, to be involved. And I think being able to somehow touch the moon can inspire these future generations to want to go to the moon or to go to Mars. And it's very important in that regards. And that's why we're building the Stardust Space Center as well, with our research center that's focused on many things that we are struggling in the North with, such as medical, food sovereignty, and technology sovereignty, and different things. And we're really creating that first and foremost to create an opportunity for our youth to be able to participate in an environment that they feel comfortable in, because a lot of people struggle with going to the big cities. I go there for 2 days and I need to come back nevertheless. But nevertheless, it's because what happens is a lot of the parents are afraid of losing their youths while they send them to the big communities, and then they never come back to their indigenous or northern communities. And we have a massive population decline, and unfortunately they eat the dreams of their kids because of that. So we got to find a fine line in between that. How can we keep the kids and also create careers in both sectors? Because we're going to be needing like couples of millions of people for Northern Ontario by 2036 because of the decline at 2026 because of the declining workforce of the boomer generation. But at the end of the day, there might not all be in mining and forestry and whatnot. But even if you get involved in engineering, you might end up in mining engineering and whatnot. But nevertheless, that is a northerner getting involved in mining engineering, because you don't really see these types of positions open for northerners. It's typically people that went in engineering and the south that end up in these positions. So why not youth from northern communities or indigenous communities can take those positions, and we got to start inspiring them and fostering their curiosity, I believe. So.
Yeah, and I think the key piece here is, and I heard you say this, is also retention, and getting those communities involved. I recently learned there's like more than 76, I could be wrong, but around 76 different Indigenous communities just in the province. So working with them is also very key. In addition to engineering, the trade sectors are equally as important, I think. But in the, I guess, interest of time, and a lot of, many of you have talked about the direction that the industry is taking, but if each of you could, in about a minute or two, share what your organization would like, or team or group would like to achieve for the year, and another goal for perhaps the near or far future. Any takers in
I can probably start with this again. Yeah, so I guess speaking on behalf of MOC, we have been a team that has existed for about 5 years now, and our main goal has always been to be able to hot fire test a liquid rocket engine, and each year we inch closer and closer to that goal. And this particular coming year seems like this might be it, knock on wood. So we're really looking forward to being able to actually secure, we have been able to secure the test site at Welland, but actually finally utilizing it and using it for our testing purposes, to go from our igniter testing, our injector testing, cold flow testing, to eventually being able to hot fire test our own custom built rocket engine, and hopefully eventually bring that thing down to Launch Canada 2023, and fingers crossed be the very first team to liquid hot fire a rocket engine at Launch Canada.
Yes, I'll go. So for the next year, we're really looking at getting our research station up and operational, despite a lot of political struggles with some resistance from communities and a lack of understanding. But we're really working steadily to make that happen, and at the same time working very hard on the Serenity project, and we are hoping, if all goes well, according to the government, we will be putting some more news soon. But I'm not going to share too much on that. But we're looking forward to a bigger Stardust Festival in Launch Canada as well for next year. Hopefully, Adam, his team and our team, we can bring up over 600 people, maybe. That would be quite an achievement, and to inspire more youth and for future generations. And honestly, just keep on inspiring youths. And at the end of the day, potentially be part of more great initiatives like Launch Canada, and just opening that up and lobbying so that we can make space more accessible for everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, so last summer, from our perspective, was the first ever Launch Canada rocket competition that Jason helped us bring to Cochrane, Ontario. And following on the success of that one, we're definitely wanting to make 2023 bigger and better than ever before. We've got a whole bunch of brand new rocket teams even this year. So just when I think that we've already got basically every school in the country, somehow we find new ones. So it's only continuing to grow, and we're looking forward to doing everything that we can to support that continued growth. In addition to the main competition event, we've also been running these collaborative learning experiences and hands-on projects that allow students from multiple schools to come together and work together on these big shared projects. And Omar mentioned the liquid rocket engine testing workshop that we did a year ago over about 4 months. And following on the success of that, for this year, we're actually working with over 100 students from across the country to develop the first ever Canadian rocket engine turbo pump to run the small engine that we fired before. So the turbo pump is kind of the heart of a big liquid rocket engine, and no one in Canada has ever developed one before. So we thought that we'd like to be the first, and we want to do it with students just to show what can actually be done. So we've got a number of awesome partners who are helping us to make history with that, and of course, always looking for more supporters to help this along. But if all goes well this year, we'll be able to demonstrate a piece of technology that's never existed in Canadian industry before, and of course, we'll do another really awesome competition as well.
So just to jump in quickly, and I know Adam, you're being quite modest here. You have access to a really cool set of simulation software, and
Yeah.
also has been able to procure some. So could you share a little bit about what that will look like as it also applies to the turbo pump project?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we really like doing is demonstrating to students what professional hardware and software and tools looks like in this industry. And so a year ago, when we did the engine firing event, we actually had a number of great sponsors who contributed in-kind donations of hardware, software, instrumentation, valves. And many of these were companies that actually produce that type of hardware for rockets and launch vehicles. So we were able to showcase that to the students and show, this is what a solenoid valve for a rocket actually looks like, and let's look at what makes this a rocket valve as opposed to that other cheap valve you found on Amazon or eBay. And this has become sort of a core philosophy for us. We want to make sure that these students graduate with an understanding of real industry standard, professional practices and hardware and some of the considerations that go with that. And so for this pump project, we actually got a company called Softenway that makes a very high-end suite of design and analytical software for turbo machinery to partner with us, and they're making their software available for all the students taking part in this project to use to develop this pump. We've got another awesome company called Flonex that makes simulation software again for rocket engine fluid systems, who are donating their software to all of the Canadian student teams so that they can have access to these really sophisticated tools and the learning opportunities that those represent.
Umar, if you don't mind also sharing some of your
Yeah, so we've actually been able to
items,
use Flonex a bit now. Actually, we've been in touch with them, and my team is absolutely loving it. It is a fluid simulation software, and it's been fantastic because it's actually been helping us simulate and design one of our key components that will be used in the final design of our flow system for our rocket engine, which is a captivating Venturi. Actually, it'll be a flow controller. Well, it'll be used as a flow controller, and the software itself is just helping us verify everything before we get down to eventually making the thing, which is going to be a project in and of itself. But just the fact that we can now say that we're developing a captivating Venturi in-house thanks to, Launch Canada and Flonex is just fantastic. And that was something that my team couldn't even have dreamed of a couple of years back, but here we are.
And I did also see Altair, but I could be wrong.
Yes, Altair. We've been utilizing Altair as well. It's been great. We haven't actually gone back to Altair for a bit now, but we've been using them here and there, just to kind of CAD out some things that do need to be shared rapidly and over the web, which has been fantastic, actually.
And on the notion of CAD, I'm going to go back quickly to Adam in terms of a scaled down version of, well, maybe not scaled down, but plastic turbopump and what that could look like.
Yeah, so one of the things that is probably not surprising is that students don't want to just read textbooks and do problem sets. They want to actually get their hands dirty, make and test real hardware. I mean, this is a huge part of what draws them to rocket projects in general, and this is something that traditional university programs often don't do a very good job of giving them these kinds of applied opportunities for learning that makes the theory and the underlying math and science kind of come alive. For this pump project, one of the challenges, of course, is that we've got students from all over the country, so you can't easily get everybody into one physical location to do stuff together. So we've been trying to be creative about how we can make sure that even people who are dispersed far and wide can still have these same opportunities to actually work with real hardware. And one of the ways that we're going to do that for the pump project is, thanks to modern 3D printing, it's now relatively easy for people to make very complex parts for not very much money. So we're going to have a learning project as part of this larger initiative, where we'll be putting together kind of a standard design for a 3D printed plastic pump that students will be able to build locally, get some very simple instrumentation, and then they can produce their own, they can test it out, they can try different designs, they can get a basic understanding of how pumps operate, how you get good data from them, what sort of parameters you want to look at, and encourage them to dig through the literature, learn about different styles of pumps and pump impellers and things like that, so that they can try different things, see what kind of performance they can get out of it, and then armed with that knowledge, we'll be incorporating that into the design of the final pump that we actually produce.
And as I envision it as being like, download your own turbo pump and then you could 3D print it in the comfort and convenience of, let's say, your own home or your lab at your local university. But also on the subject of spanning geographic distances from coast to coast, Flo, what do you envision as your aerospace hub / academy / space institution? I know you have a big vision for what's to come next.
Yes, so I can speak right now for my vision and the preliminary discussions that we have with the big university. So we are looking at next year launching the Aerospace and Space Academy, and the concept of that is entirely based on experiential learning and micro-credentials in deep partnership with industry. And the idea is to cover or to have a base of offering that cover the entire ecosystem, like, for example, supply chain, or part manufacturing or certification, but also offer more specialized topic-based course, such as, for example, how to design a rocketry system. And so it's quite an interesting
I think we're
journey.
rubbing off on you.
Yeah. It's quite an interesting journey because this approach is a completely different model from the standard approach of universities and college. We are looking at flexibility not only from the standpoint of the learning methods like asynchronous, synchronous, etc., but also from the standpoint of leveraging both content, so knowledge, versus practice, skills, versus storytelling with industry experts. We are trying also to grasp the concept of competency and competency assessment, because that's a very hard topic. So we are playing right now with different models, but at the end of the day, what we want to do is build a community where we can inspire people, we can make people dream, and we enable people to try, whether it's for a career choice or whether it's for fun. Because I think there was a comment about Elon Musk at the beginning, and Elon Musk was born to be Elon Musk, right? Nobody else would be Elon Musk. I am Flo, so I am different. But the thing that the current system is doing, we are not permitting people to dream and to try things based on their dream. So we tend to put them in a cage, you know. And I know in France, we have a saying for people who used to live in Paris. So I'm talking now 30 years ago, or 40 years ago when I was a kid. It was work, sleep, work, tramway, sleep. And that's your life. That's not a life. And I know with my students very often, they ask me, you know, what is a successful career? Well, it depends for everybody. But in my mind, it's when work is not work. Work is part of living. And you can do things that you enjoy, things that make you happy, and then you contribute better. But it's actually an interesting journey to go from the standard learning model that is well established, but not necessarily well aligned with the needs. And particularly for Canada, because Canada has a very unique ecosystem, whether it's demographic, geographic, in terms of resource, etc. Having been up north, I know how it feels. I was stuck once in a snowstorm near Wawa on a bridge with a wolf. Okay, I was in my car and there was a wolf here, and I have a picture. And we spent 30 minutes being, you know, miserable in the snowstorm. So Canada has such an interesting landscape, a variety of culture. We rely heavily on immigration. So we need to learn also to deal with that. Because in France, we say things which are not proper in Canada, for example, or could be interpreted differently somewhere else. So it's a very interesting ecosystem. It's quite challenging, to be honest. It's a lot of effort. Sometimes you feel, you know, it's almost effort wasted. But at the end of the day, if you keep going, I believe there is a very unique opportunity to show a pathway for youth, for immigrants, for people with disabilities, for veterans, for seniors. I mean, I'm 50, so I'm considered a senior, I guess. You know, when you if you want to change, there are opportunities, but we need to do our homework so that the learning opportunities are accessible, relevant, meaningful, and that needs to go beyond just financial transactions. We are looking at a model where we integrate mentorship in our courses as well. That's extremely well received. So you need to go the extra step.
And I think you're doing that a little bit already, because you know, you're harnessing that power really of those varying perspectives based on who you get to be your guest speakers. And I know you typically don't target the CEOs, you don't target the Elon Musks. So, you know, Why do you do that? And how has it worked for you in the past? And do you envision that it will look different in the future?
So I think what we have built so far will look different. It's like when you are a startup, eventually you need to adapt your model so that it becomes a proper operations, etc. And there is basic cost to cover at the end of the day as well. But there are the pieces, the critical pieces, which I really hope will stay and will be there, are the active collaboration. And it's not just talking, it's working together. And the storytelling or mentoring, because these are two pieces I think everybody can relate to, and everybody feels better when they are involved. And I know it doesn't matter which culture. At some point in time in France, for example, your elders, we were, when I was kid, they were the knowledge, they were the Bibles, right? They are knowledge, that experience, we are listening to them. And I see now in students, this appetite is coming back. But with technology, internet, etc., they are now more critical. And I think it's a good thing because it forces us to also be honest with ourselves. So it's interesting time to change. Huge opportunities for those who want to work in this field.
Well, that's a promising note. And now I guess we want to have some time for questions. But before we do that, I'd like to just thank all of you and to open up the floor to your closing remarks if you have any, and then we'll hear from the audience.
Okay, well, why don't I'll jump in then. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is probably one of the most exciting times for aerospace in Canada, certainly at any point in my lifetime. We are seeing an increasing willingness to think a little bit more outside the box and think outside of these traditional areas of technology that we've done in the past. And I think there are just so many opportunities for young people who want to go in this direction. I mean, aerospace has always been an industry for passionate people. It's it's not something that you typically just find yourself doing to pay the bills. It really attracts people who are motivated and passionate, and it's so much fun working with people like that. And you can kind of feed off of that enthusiasm. For me, that enthusiasm from the current crop of university students has just been incredible, and it certainly keeps me going. So it's an exciting time. It's an exciting industry, and I would strongly encourage anybody who feels similarly about it to take a chance and get involved, because there are so many ways to do that now, and there are definitely those of us who want to encourage and support you every step of the way.
That's great. Also, if I mean, we can provide email addresses and other ways of contacting all of our speakers tonight. So feel free to reach out to us at chair@spaceplacecanada.ca, and we'd be, and also visiting our website at spaceplacecanada.ca. So, and any other closing remarks?
Don't ever give up. Become the change you want to see. At the end of the day, you can become part of the aerospace family. You just gotta believe in yourself and reach out, because someone's gonna be there and they're gonna be happy to talk your head out about aerospace. Just for an example, when I first met Adam over the phone, we talked for like 6 hours. My wife was kind of like, "What are you doing still on the phone at 2 a.m.?" But nevertheless, definitely reach out because people in aerospace have a great heart and they are really open to collaborating. You got to be open-minded to work in this industry, and at the end of the day, that's what I think makes it very fun to work with these people. They're very open-minded about it, and you don't have to explain necessarily all the details of what aerospace is because they know. But nevertheless, there's champions out there such as Adam and Umar and Florent, and yourself, Wintta, that are willing to help out in every ways or capability or shape. Just reach out. Don't be scared. We're not gonna bite. And to the last thing I would like to say is the key to success is your determination. That's it.
Perfect. And, failure is always a stepping stone and, well, not a stepping stone, but also a way of.
It will happen.
Yeah, it's inevitable in what we do. Yeah. And
Just don't give up, right?
exactly.
So on the note of getting involved, actually, that's something that I want to reiterate as well. Actually, something I've noticed is sometimes people are quite hesitant to reach out or even check out what is going on, simply because either they lack the understanding and they think, oh no, aerospace, that's going to be a little too scary. That's literally like rocket science. Oh no. Or even in terms of just like not wanting to get involved just because they're from a completely different field, even though they have the interest in the matter. And that's something that I do want to mention is not really a huge problem. At least something that in terms of like wanting to get involved. Like for example, on my team, we've had individuals that, like I said, are fairly green in regards to their own rocketry knowledge. But we try and educate them, we try and teach them and help them develop those skill sets. That is why we're here. And we've even had teams, we've even had members on this team that aren't necessarily even involved in not only aerospace engineering, but like engineering at all. We've had students that were from like business, from law,
Computer
from
science,
communications, computer science. Absolutely. We've had students from like the graphic design program. This is an industry and a team and a kind of a way of life that is open to anybody and everybody that is kind of willing to take part in it. And getting involved is usually actually the easiest thing. Is the reaching out that's slightly hard, but getting involved is always the easiest part.
Flo, do you have anything to add before now we're coming upon
just one thing? Yeah, just one thing to emphasize a little bit what was said just before. It's quite interesting having been in operations for many years. I look at the world as an integration piece. You need everybody to work and be aligned. And I know when we talk to the industries, which I would say represents the next innovations in terms of technology in the workplace, the conversation is changing. And we had a discussion, I think it was with IBM a couple of years ago, around Industry 4.0, advanced manufacturing, etc. And something that they said was interesting. If right now we need 10 shop floor workers, 2 engineers, and 1 manager, in 5 or 10 years, we'll need 5 shop floor workers, 1 engineer, 1 social worker, 1 psychologist, and so there will be an interesting room and space for people with different educational background, I think is the right way to say it. Aerospace being just such a wide sector, I think there is a lot of opportunity there. But the future is what really we make of it. And I know at the end of the day, if I look back a few years ago, I would rather hire people who have good hearts, good intent, and want to work and have an impact, rather than people who have a lot of letters and accreditation behind their names, but they are not team players or they are difficult to work with. And I think attitude, behaviors trump everything at the end of the journey. And particularly in Canada now, where the job market is so much in favor of employees, and we talk about flex work, etc. The younger generation now who is going to graduate to finish high school will have huge opportunities, and they will be able to set the pace to some extent compared to my time where the company was setting the pace. So it's quite a very unique time, I think.
Absolutely, and tying into different disciplines coming together and for a common good, whether it's in aerospace or otherwise, is a common thread. And now we'll take any questions. And thank you again to all of our speakers. I'm sure we all appreciate your insightful discussions. I know I really did, and thank you again. So now, if we have any questions from the audience, I'd be happy to table them.
Tough crowd.
Well, we have just a little over 10 people, 11 on.
Just need to inspire one. That's all that matters.
Exactly. Well, I'll take it that all the questions were answered, or they're still taking it in. I'll give it another minute. So while we wait, I'd just like to reiterate that Space Place Planetarium Canada, we are a nonprofit group of multidisciplinary professionals determined to bring an iconic public planetarium back to Toronto. We are also supporting a virtual one for Canada and the world. And if you'd like to know more about what we do, be sure to check out our website at spaceplacecanada.ca. Okay, we have a few questions in the chat now. One of them is Puya, who asks, do companies prefer to not choose international students due to security clearance because it takes a while? Any takers on this one?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. So the aerospace sector being so wide, actually, I think a very small portion of companies require security clearance. Usually they deal with defense contract as well. And security clearance, I cannot comment exactly on how long it takes, but it can be fairly fast in a matter of months or two. It can be very long as well, depending on the country of origin, etc., and some complications that they may face. But I would advise that do not let an administrative piece hold you up from applying to jobs, talking to people in the industry. There are so many opportunities that you will find something if you really want to find something. What would be, I think, more important if for you younger person when they look for jobs in that sector would be to understand the landscape. So in a nutshell, aerospace is mostly Quebec and Ontario. Quebec, I think it's a lot of manufacturing and a little bit of maintenance, repair and operations, and Ontario is the reverse. But between those two provinces, I think that covers most of it. There is a little bit in BC and now in Alberta. I think Dervilan is going to open the plant near Calgary. But really the core is Ontario and Quebec. When I was at Bombardier, we did an audit, and between Toronto and Hamilton, there was 230 companies dealing with just airplanes, varying from all sizes. If you're really interested in that sector, I would really advise you to go, for example, on the website of AIAC, the Aerospace Industry Association, or CCA, the Canadian Council for Aviation and Aerospace, the website of the government as well. They usually have a list of all the industry partners and industry members, etc., and start to look at each one of them. Another advice that I would give for particularly young person who are looking to work in that sector, don't wait for jobs opening. When there is a job opening, everybody applies, and then it goes, HR or computer screening, etc. My advice, just if you're interested in a company, just contact them. Don't wait.
Yeah, that flow, what you're saying is very real. At the end of the day, be a mosquito and go network with people. Even if you get the opportunity to attend space events, one I would really recommend is the Space Symposium in Colorado Springs. During April, I believe it's $200 to US to get into the conference, but it's nonstop networking and the social events and everything. Everyone's looking forward to network and to meet with new people. So that one's less technical and more business oriented, and just don't be shy. Just go ask people for stuff, and if you're from Canada, there's the Canadian Pavilion, and they'll help you out there. There's great people working there. And again, don't be shy, ask, reach out. The worst you'll get is a no at the end of the day, and a no is not going to hurt you. You can just keep barging different ways. You can always use the side door. So nevertheless, that's my take on that. I would not give up and just keep on going. And just reach out on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's been a really wonderful tool since COVID, when people didn't really have the opportunity to reach out, and just reach out and add some people and ask questions and join groups. People are not are tend to be very happy to answer your questions or guide you through the right place when you're not trying to sell them something. But that's my advice. So.
Great, thanks, Jason and Flo. Does that answer your question? Hopefully, Puya. So we have another question. What can we do to introduce high school students who may not be ready to fire off rockets themselves? Also, I think it's a safety hazard, but we'll talk more about that too.
I mean, depends on the rocket, right? Like I built my first little model rocket when I was about 7 years old, and you can buy little rocket kits like that. You can get them from hobby shops. You can get them online. You can fly them from a park or a schoolyard, subject to whatever local bylaws might be in place. But a lot of this stuff is actually a lot more accessible than you might think. So for me, model rocketry was definitely my first way into it. But I mean, the best thing about space is that it's so multidisciplinary. Like there's every imaginable area of engineering works its way in. So there are all kinds of events available for people. There's NASA Space Apps Challenge for people who are into coding. Yeah, you name it. There are a lot of different ways in.
Yeah, that was my my first taste to bottled water rocket learning activity in high school. Yeah.
I'd like to actually jump in on this a little bit. My first foray into rocketry was not anything related to model rockets at all. It was actually a presentation that Adam gave for my team way back in start of COVID, and stayed up till 4 a.m. for that meeting, and for that time zone. And that was sort of my that was when I kind of got hooked a little bit. But for somebody that is wanting to skip all that entirely or hasn't had the chance to do that yet, one of the other things that you can absolutely do is definitely reach out to the respective rocketry teams within the universities or colleges around your own area. It might seem like, oh, just because you're a high school student, you're not really allowed to participate, but you really are. Everybody wants to kind of like bring you into the fold, teach you a little bit more. And any time that a high schooler has reached out to myself or my team members, we've done our best to actually get them as involved as possible and even educate them and tell them about the team itself. I remember one of the members that was actually at the LR101 hot fire was actually a high schooler. They were just going into university, so they're actually in the summer between high school and university. So yeah, definitely reach out to the respective rocketry team in your area.
Okay, great. So now we have someone asking, will the turbo pump that will be designed be used for rocket hot fire test, or is it just a test article?
Yeah, the plan is that we'll actually be using it to run the same engine that we fired a year ago. So we actually decided to design the pump for that engine for that reason, so that we can get to an actual firing with it in as short a time as possible.
Okay, hopefully that answers that. Andre Montano, I believe he's formerly from TMU, says he's excited to see everyone at Canadian Space Conference in January. So that's just a comment, but all right. So we'll take one last question, which is already in the chat. How can we get a job as a newly graduated aerospace engineer, as most of the positions require experience in aerospace? Again, this is a loaded question.
So my advice,
Chicken and egg.
so it's not an aerospace sector specific request. Every company wants to hire senior people very cheaply. That's normal. At the end of the journey, they settle for what they are. My advice for you is connect. If there is, for example, a particular company that you are interested in, try to connect directly with some of the people that may be part of that company. LinkedIn is a very nice tool. One thing that is very important though, and I think that's one of the downside of things like LinkedIn, it can very quickly be used as a mass outreach tool, which I think is not right. So if you, for example, you want to work with Bombardier or with De Havilland, try to connect with people who work there. You can try to connect with VPs, but usually these guys are fairly busy, but other people there, but talk to them, keep in touch. I know from my personal side, there is nothing worse than a student that wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, and the next time I hear from them is 1 year later when they need a recommendation letter. You know, in that respect, I think there is still a little bit of old-fashioned attitude that is very good. You know, being polite, being professional, having interesting inquiries for those people, and I think that will get a long way. But don't stop. My advice: do not stop at what is posted on jobs. Because traditionally, and I know in my experience, it was HR writing job posting for me. And they were not at all what I was looking for. So even if they ask for senior people, etc., don't be afraid to apply. And it costs nothing to apply, to be honest.
And to add to that, you know, if you do have the opportunity to get involved with student projects, student teams, that kind of thing, absolutely highlight that, because you will build practical skills that many people don't develop until they've been on the job for years. So the more that you can show a potential employer that you actually do have practical experience as well, you don't just know the theory, but you know how to turn that theory into real hardware, that is going to go a very long way for you.
I do want to just make one more comment. It is just because you are a new grad doesn't mean you can still join those teams. Like they're still open to accepting new alumni and kind of bring back returning students as well. So just because you graduated doesn't mean that those gateways are blocked to you now. So please make sure to take advantage of that.
Okay, great. So I think that's it for the questions.
All right. So I want to thank you so much, Adam, Flo, Jason, Omar, for a fantastic discussion. This has been so interesting, so inspiring as an educator, hearing about your own inspiration, hearing about your stories of other people who have been inspired by what you do. As someone who spent some time in the North, I lived in Sudbury for a few years. It's nice to hear about what's happening in the North. It's nice to hear perspectives of, bringing storytelling and culture into a field that can sometimes feel a little rigid, if you will. So thank you so much for your perspectives this evening. It has been fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that will, thanks for that, Julie, and again to all of our speakers and also to our audience for your, penetrating questions, if you will, and also for attending tonight's event. If you liked it, and it's my hope that you did, make sure to subscribe for more. We have a lot more events planned out for the new year. Stay plugged into those events by visiting our website, spaceplacecanada.ca. Or reaching out to us at info@spaceplacecanada.ca. Good evening, everyone, and hope to see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Merci, miigwech.